All right, so this is Battle for Germany. It is set up, and we've done the pre-turn. Pre-turn stuff. This right before you actually begin the game, all the NATO units get to make a potential pre-war move. I guess that's probably the better way of putting it. Pre-war move. So all the NATO guys, what I'll do is I'll just kind of cant them a little bit before we get ready to start, and then you roll against their proficiency rating, which is the number in the lower right. And you add 3 to your die roll. So this guy, I think I rolled a 5, which becomes an 8. If it's higher than the proficiency rating, they cannot move. If it's less than or equal to, they can use their 6 movement points and get an early jump on things. So a lot of the Italians were able to start moving up towards the Iron Curtain, either reinforce Germany or take advanced positions in the passes just in case the Warsaw Pact moves against Austria or Yugoslavia. The tricky thing about this, though, is that you roll one at a time, and I might have a plan. I want to form a line like so, and I advance a guy into this hex. Well, what happens if these two guys fail their movement roll and aren't able to come to his assistance? He could be hung out to dry, so you have to be really thoughtful. It's an interesting game. You might call it the War of Nerves version in this game. It's kind of nerve-wracking, really, because you'd be surprised how many 6s you can roll and have some of these high-quality guys, like the Canadians didn't move at all because I rolled a 6 for them, which becomes a 9. And even though the proficiency is 8, they just stuck right there, which is kind of unfortunate because I really wanted them to guard that city there against air assault. So all the pre-war stuff is done. I'm fairly happy with the moves. There's a few guys that didn't move that I was kind of disappointed about. A couple U.S. units, crack unit here and a West German unit here, were unable to move. This West German unit didn't move. Kind of annoying. This crack U.S. unit is stuck way back by the French border. But on the other hand, the prearranged military equipment sites are well guarded here. So air assault against those POMCA sites are probably not going to go off. And you really do want to protect those. Don't let those things die because that's bad. You're going to lose a lot of valuable equipment if those things are taken out. So that's all done, and we've gone through the deep strikes in the air war. How the air game works, it kind of reminds me of GMT's Next War system, which is probably an evolution of sorts of this system. This is a much older system. What you do is, let me pull out an Su-27 here, or better yet, let's use a MiG-29. This will be a better glimpse. If you look at this MiG-29 here, you'll see the 4 in the upper right-hand corner. That's its air-to-air rating. Anything in a black circle indicates that that unit is all weather, so it's not going to be impacted by weather severely like other aircraft types. The number in the middle on the right hand side, that one that's not in a black circle, that is its ground support number, and that's a potential column shift in ground combat. The number in the lower right-hand corner, which is also in a black circle, is its strike rating. And you use that for deep strikes, either against logistics or to try to crater runways and take out air bases, or to strike actual units and put disruption markers on enemy targeted units. The M indicates its medium range, and that affects, what theaters it can shift to and transfer to. The number 4 on the left-hand side of the counter, that is its recovery number, maintenance number, I think it might be. Anyways, you dice against that number to find out if you get to use it on the next turn. So it's kind of like in the Next War system, when a unit aborts, you have to dice to see if it's ready to use again on the next turn. It's like that in this game, except you have to dice for every air unit every turn to find out if it recovers and is able to continue to fly sorties in the following game turn. So the higher that number, the better turnaround rate for executing sorties that air unit is. And so you can assign your air units to a variety of different kinds of missions. The first thing you're going to do is put a bunch of units into air superiority, and the Warsaw Pact does that first. NATO gets to use that as a guide to what are they going to commit to air superiority, and that just represents their AWACS advantage. And then once you do that, if they end up putting more units than the other guy, then they have air superiority. If the Warsaw Pact still has more units than NATO, then they have air superiority. And the advantage of air superiority means that when you do escorts or when you do intercepts, you can actually use multiple aircraft. It gives you an edge in intercepts and things like that. So you can use more aircraft in an air superiority role from the pool of units that you put in that box. Next thing we went ahead and did is we did the strikes, and I didn't do any logistics strikes or strikes on targeted enemy units. I felt that the best use of air power on turn one was actually to just pound the crap out of NATO air bases. So we used a whole bunch of Su-27s and backfire bombers to bomb the NATO bases, and we hit them hard. They're going to take 3 air losses, which is pretty substantial. And they also are going to have a number of aircraft that won't be able to fly next turn. So the crater rating is up to 7, and destroyed aircraft is 3. The counterstrikes from NATO are not as effective, only 1 cratering and no destroyed aircraft. The cost is, it costs the Warsaw Pact, I think, 3 MiG-29s, 1 Su-27, and the backfire bombers were also taken out. Now, these losses are not necessarily permanent. What you're going to do in the next turn is you're going to take all of the markers in here, you're going to mix them up in a cup, and you draw half of them out, and they're gone permanently from the game. The other half will go back and become available to use. So you're going to recover some of those losses. NATO took heavy losses as well, losing some F-15s, Tornadoes, Mirage 2000s, and I think those are Dutch F-16s were lost in that. So things, it was pretty bloody. I don't think things went particularly well for NATO in that. It's hard to tell right now what the impact of that will be, but in turn 2, I think we're going to see that the Warsaw Pact will probably have an edge in air combat on turn 2. So that was the plan. We saved some units for, not for further strikes, but rather for air support. And we still got some interceptors, got a bunch of MiG-23s left and almost useless MiG-21s left to run escorts and intercepts. On the NATO side, they have, I think, a little bit of an edge in the rest of the air combat in that they do still have an F-15E that they can use for intercepting. I'm reluctant to use it in that capacity just because it's a great strike platform and I hate to lose it in air-to-air combat. They also got some Mirages and some Tornadoes from the UK and from West Germany that are more, they're better suited for striking than for air superiority, but I'm casting them in that role on this particular turn because, frankly, we needed everybody that we could. They're saving their Jaguars, a couple other Mirages, older Mirage 5s, Alpha Jets, A-10s, and Harriers, using those for their combat support roles. So that is the outcome early in turn 1 and kind of gives you a sense of what the game's going to involve. All this stuff actually works out pretty fast. I know in the Next War system, in the advanced game, it can take a little time to work through, the air part of the game. I feel like it does move maybe a little bit faster in this particular system. But if you've played Next War, you'll pick up, there's a lot of similarity between this and that system. So there you go. That's where things stand right now in the battle for Germany. We're just about ready to start the ground war.